haircut just for this? Did you get a haircut?
No. Never a dull moment.
I had to know. The time didn't matter.
Hi, friends. Thanks for tuning in. We're always full of laughs here, beginning to end. My name is Dr. Mary Sunderland, and I am the Director of Research and Education here at the Foundation Fighting Blindness in Canada, and I'm joined by my colleague,
Dr. Chad Andrews, Manager of Research and Education at the Foundation Fighting Blindness.
We're really excited and happy about today because it's our very first Facebook Live session of 2018. Can you believe it? 2018.
2018.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we're looking forward to a really fun year of talking about lots of exciting developments. The pace of research and the development of new treatments, it only seems to be accelerating, and that's a good thing. It does mean there's more work for us. That's a good thing too.
Yeah, there's plenty of work. In fact, I think we made a pretty smooth transition from being very busy at the end of 2017 to being incredibly busy at the beginning of 2018. It's just par for the course at the FFB.
And now I'm just remembering that for our last Facebook Live session, we actually had a little bit of trouble with volume for our friends and listeners who are online. So if you're watching right now, if you could give us a thumbs up or a I can hear you or a hello, just so that we know that the volume is working and that everything's going smoothly. So
That would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
And then, just like our Facebook Live sessions from last year, which we had so much fun doing, we're looking forward to this year. And we're going to keep, at least for our monthly session, the same kind of general format, where we do our Facebook Live sessions after we've sent our monthly e-news out. So this is a chance for us to talk about some of the stories, because often there's some dense science and regulatory information in there that is just more interesting and helpful to talk about. And it's a chance really for us to answer your questions. And so we already had some questions that came in, and we'll certainly be getting to those questions today. So the stories we're going to be talking about are a little bit about our 2017 year in review, and then looking ahead, the 4 vision research trends and emerging treatments to look out for in 2018. And then we're going to finish off talking about the Young Leaders Summit. So with that, actually, before we get going, I did want to respond to a few of the questions that came in, and it was about whether it's possible for us to do closed captioning of these events, especially for our friends who are living with Usher syndrome. And so we are looking into it. We've put a request out to Facebook, but I wanted to put a request out to our online community. If there's anybody out there that knows about how to close caption a Facebook Live event, please reach out to us, because we really want to do it. And we hope to be able to do it for the next session.
Yeah, we're always trying to make our material and our forms of interaction as accessible as possible. So if anyone knows how to help us along in that manner, that would be greatly appreciated.
So I now pass it over to you, Chad. Let's say a little bit about 2017 in review.
2017, absolutely. Yeah, what a year. I mean, and obviously this was the final story that we released in 2017, which we tend to do at the end of the year, our year in review. Just on a personal note, 2017 was incredibly engaging for me, because it was the year that I started working at the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I was brought on board in February, and it was great. I mean, I hit the ground running and got to learn a lot about some of the cutting-edge science that's taking place in gene therapy, stem cells, and elsewhere, and got to sort of immerse myself in some of the policy frameworks that are essential for bringing the science to patients. So that was incredible, and I think that it was a great year for vision science, and it was a great year for the foundation. So thank you for all your support, and thanks for interacting with us in this way. The most obvious thing, or the most noticeable thing on the list, because it's number 1, the most read story of 2017, is a piece that we put on the site on CRISPR breakthrough, restoring vision by reprogramming cells. And that's not really any incredible surprise. We know that you're interested in CRISPR. We know that it's an enormous topic. I would say that 2017 was a year where CRISPR sort of emerged out of the enclosed sort of sphere of academic research and interaction, and sort of became an idea and an acronym that has some kind of value in the the sort of general public sphere. People are talking about CRISPR, people are interested in CRISPR. So we had a lot to say about CRISPR in 2017. We'll continue to have that conversation. I mean, it's not going anywhere. CRISPR.
It's going forward.
It's going forward. It's going.
Forward.
It's not going backwards. That's for sure. That's one thing that we can say about CRISPR. But as we've discussed in the past, CRISPR enables scientists to edit genes in the same way that you and I edit text on a screen using a word processor. So this is a sort of a power that wasn't available before, at least not in the way that it is with CRISPR.
And then what I wanted to say, I mean, I was really interested looking at these top stories of 2017, and these are the top stories chosen by people that come to our website and read the stories. It's not just a random, let's choose 10 stories. It's like, what were the most read stories on our site? And so I was actually really pleased to see that the second most read story was 4 big predictions for vision research in 2017. So we thought, hey, let's do the same thing or something similar for 2018.
Yeah.
And so rather than going through the whole list of the top stories, I just recommend if you have a cold day at home, which we often have in January in Canada, curl up with the screen and read our top 11 stories of 2017. There's a link in the e-news. And I also wanted to really thank everybody that contributed to our year-end fundraising campaign, Bring the Fight. It was an incredible success, thanks to some of my colleagues that are in the room here with me. And we raised a total of $76,620 for vision research.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, so thank you. So with 2017, there was also a ton of stories about gene therapy, and that's no surprise to us because 2017 was the year for gene therapy. And so let's shift over, and we're going to start talking about the 4 big predictions for 2018 because gene therapy is a good segue from 2017 right into 2018, because one of the last stories that we sent out at the end of 2017 was this incredible announcement coming from the company Spark Therapeutics that they'd received FDA approval, making their sort of first ocular gene therapy for blinding eye disease, sort of turning it into a treatment. I mean, this regulatory pathway is complex and convoluted, and there's so many different steps, especially when you're doing something for the first time. And I know that we've been trying to keep people up to date to follow these regulatory steps along the way because it's important, you know, the more that we know, the more that we can understand why things take the time that they do to get done. And so it was thrilling to know that sort of the gene therapy is, the drug name is now called Luxturna in the United States. Outside of the United States, it's still referred to as Veretagene neparvovec. And this is a gene therapy that was developed over decades, really, to treat a disease that's, the genetic disease is when you have, they call it a biallelic RPE65 mutation. So it's a mutation in both of your RPE65 genes. And this type of genetic diagnosis is often seen in people who have a clinical diagnosis of Leber's congenital amaurosis. But this, you know, it's incredible. It's been in the works for so long. It's a huge triumph to have it reach this treatment status. You know, what's the difference? Well, when something is considered a treatment by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the US, it means that according to their standards, this isn't an experiment anymore. It's not just an experimental intervention. It's something that has enough data to show that it is effective and it is safe. And all of these, this is very standardized across the board. Any new drug that gets approved by the FDA has to meet safety and efficacy standards. And all of those checks and balances are in place, you know, for the good patients.
Yeah.
So this is what makes something a treatment.
Right.
That's when your doctor can prescribe it to you.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. It's one of the reasons we talk about this sometimes as well. One of the reasons why it takes so long to get from the lab to the market. Right. That can often be frustrating. We want treatments to come sooner rather than later, but it's essential that they meet those standards in safety and efficacy. Otherwise, we're going to be offering up treatments that we're not exactly sure what kind of effect they're going to have. So it's important that we adhere to those standards. It's not a treatment until it makes its way into the market and meets certain approvals. Yeah, that's right.
And so we had lots of communications out to our community to share this development. It's incredible. But what was a little uncertain on our side here in Canada is that what does an FDA approval in the United States mean for us and our community here in Canada? So the challenge for a little while is that it really wasn't clear because Spark Therapeutics, the company leading the charge, they hadn't really started into this regulatory path in Canada. In Canada, you have to get Health Canada approval. There's various regulatory bodies that have to review different packages of documents. We could really get talking about that because Chad and I do a lot of sort of that health policy advocacy work together, but perhaps that's a Facebook session for another audience. But it's the important news. There's a big announcement yesterday. It's publicly available. I was just speaking to one of our wonderful contacts at Spark this morning just to learn a little bit more about the announcement that the pharmaceutical company Novartis will be basically taking the lead with the Luxturna gene therapy product in countries outside of the US. And so I'm sure the question from our audience would be, well now what? Like, when can it be available in Canada? And so keeping in mind, this announcement just came out yesterday. So now we know Novartis is the big company. Novartis, they're great supporters of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. They've always been a sponsor of our Vision Quest, our patient education education session. So they certainly have wonderful staff, and they know how to get through the regulatory pathways that exist around the world. But will they come to Canada, and when will they start acting in Canada? I don't know any dates. I've reached out to contacts, but what I do know for sure, this is really important, write this down. Write this down. And if I'm wrong, anybody out there in the pharma world, please correct me. My understanding is that the way a pharmaceutical company is going to decide which country do we go to next, one of the main questions they ask is there anybody who lives in that country that needs this treatment, right? So let's say Novartis calls us up and they say, hey, Foundation Fighting Blindness Canada, is there anybody in Canada that could use this Luxturna gene therapy? Well, if I say, absolutely, you know what, I've had 200 people email me over the last few days and they're ready to get this treatment. Well, that's going to motivate a company to get moving and to move and to make sure that they can bring the new treatments where there are people that stand to benefit from the treatment. But if I said, no, I don't know, Novartis.
Yeah, or we don't have any accurate information.
I don't have any data
on that.
So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Then
they're less likely to be motivated because it's not as clear. It's no fault to them. It's just that's how you make. It's sort of a key part of the decision-making process. Like, are you going to go through all the work to bring a drug somewhere when there's nobody that needs the drug? And so I know there are people living in Canada that could stand to benefit from Luxturna that have mutations in their RP65 gene, that they could get this treatment and it could have a really tremendous and transformative effect on them. So the way that we know, Chad, what do you think I'm going to say? What should people do?
I think you're probably going to start talking about the patient registry.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I would do if I were you.
Yeah. And so the thing that you need to do, whether you have Leber congenital amaurosis, whether you have an RP65 mutation, you have to take the steps to get enrolled on the Foundation Fighting Blindness Canada patient registry. I'm going to work on creating some more content to help people understand what the registry is. We're going to put that on our website. Right now we have some basic content. We're going to build up some more content, but I'm going to explain it really, really basically. The Foundation Fighting Blindness Patient Registry is a database, right? In the most basic term, it's a database. but it's a medically secure database that is managed across 4, hopefully in the near future, 5 different enrollment sites at hospitals across Canada. The lead site is at the Hospital for Sick Kids here in Toronto, and there are other sites across Canada. Now, if you come to our website, you can fill out a form and we can refer you to the site where you can get enrolled. So we here at the Foundation Fighting Blindness, we are a referral site. So that's our role. We tell people about the registry. Thanks to our donors, we provide financial support to the registry, and we refer people. And then when you get to your proper enrollment site, that's where you enroll. And once you're inside of the database, that information of whatever's in there, that's private between your enrolling doctor and you, because there's lots of privacy laws. I can't look at your medical information, Chad can't look at your medical information. So if you think you've enrolled, I can't tell you if you have or not. All I can check is if I've referred you to the right site. You have to check at your enrollment site if you've been enrolled properly. And then inside of this database, there will be very detailed information about your clinical diagnosis, like the name of your disease. It might be retinitis pigmentosa, it might be Leber congenital amaurosis, it might be choroideremia. And then there's also information about, what's your vision like? Do you have a genetic diagnosis? So all of that information is inside of the patient registry. It's secure, it's private, it's between you and your clinician. But what we can do as a referral site is I can look inside of the registry and I can see, oh, you know what? We have 1,200 people in the registry, and we have 600 of them that have a genetic diagnosis. And here's what the genetic diagnosis is. So I can look in there pretty quickly, and I can check. Oh, we have this many people who might be eligible to take Luxturna. So this is an incredibly important database. When a new drug becomes available, it's essentially important, and it's critically important to drive the development of more clinical trials.
Yeah, so a big part of the registry obviously is connecting you to these registry centers so you can be connected to a clinical trial that is appropriate for you. That's one possibility, right? But it's also about standing up and being counted, right? If we want to bring emerging treatments to Canada, such as Luxturna, then as Mary is saying, it's absolutely essential that we have the numbers, that we have the appropriate data so that we can engage policymakers and decision makers in this way.
And we are a funder, like because of the people that donate to the Foundation Fighting Blindness, are people who donate, that allows us to fund the registry, and so it's free to you to enroll on the registry.
Yeah.
And we know, we hear from so many of you, genetic testing is not as easy as it should be, and it's not as equitable as it should be, and so we're going to take a lot of steps this year to try to move that needle. And so if you've been having a tough time, keep at it. Everybody has to be their own best self-advocate.
Yeah.
So if you're having trouble getting genetic testing, keep at it. Use this, print out our latest announcement about Luxturna, bring it to your doctor, explain to them about why you need a referral to get this genetic testing done. You need to stand up and get counted.
Yeah.
If you don't need to, but if you want new treatments, then you need to.
Yeah, for sure. And genetic testing is so important. We've talked about it multiple times in the past, but it's also worth pointing out that we know that that's a hurdle. We know it's hard to connect to a genetic counselor. You don't have to do that before you come to us and give us some basic information to connect to a registry center.
Right.
Once that happens, and once you actually start communicating with individuals at the registry center, then they can potentially help you in the right direction. But that's not something that we require for that first point of contact.
Right.
So don't stop. Don't allow that to prevent you from going to our website and signing on with us so that we can direct you in the appropriate direction. That's not a hurdle.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Times.
It's very exciting.
Really exciting. And also just the whole regulatory space, all the effort and resources it takes to actually make something accessible to the people in our community, that's what we care about. That's what we care about, right? So we don't stop at the research. We stop when the people have the treatment who need the treatment, right?
That's
like
right.
so there's work that constantly needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's really important to know that this is game changing, right? Like when I started at the foundation a few years ago, there weren't any companies developing drugs for inherited retinal diseases. Now there's like at least 20.
Yeah.
There's so many. It's really, really encouraging.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's not like you started here 10 years ago.
No.
You've been here for 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. So a lot has happened
Yeah,
in
it's
3
amazing.
years.
Mm-hmm.
I think you made a really important point when it comes to the different kinds of policy environments in different countries, because we know that that's one of the sort of barriers between treatment that emerges in one country coming to Canada. So that's one of the things that we're working on. We're working on finding ways to foster a healthy political landscape so that treatments come here as soon as possible, make their way to patients as soon as possible. So it's a barrier, right? That's something that we have to work on. It could be easier for a treatment such as Luxturna to find its way to Canadian patients. So that's one thing that we're doing at the foundation is working in the policy sphere, working directly with companies and with government to try to do what we can to facilitate that process, to make it easier for approved and treatments that have been approved by regulatory bodies to come to Canada, trying to make that easier.
And that actually steps in sort of the next big trend in 2018. 2018.
Yeah, it's 2018.
It's 2018. It's called more clinical trials, right? There are more and more clinical trials, and we're going to see more clinical trials not just in the inherited retinal disease space, but across the board. And we see that that's really an important role for us to be able to play to help patients, people in our community make sense of all of these trials. I mean, like there are multiple trials for choroideremia run by different companies.
Yeah.
Like, how do you figure out which one makes sense for you? Like, we're just trying. It's so exciting.
Another thing
right?
you didn't see 3 years ago, right?
No.
Hundreds of trials on
It's
choroideremia.
amazing, and we have multiple trials for X-linked retinitis pigmentosa coming up. We have trials for X-linked retinoschisis. I mean, it's amazing, right? And so again, push for the registry, but we want more of those trials in Canada. So it's thrilling to work with organizations, other nonprofit organizations like Clinical Trials Ontario, who share our vision to want to have more trials here. Because if we have more trials here, then people see that we have the infrastructure, we have the things in place to deliver the treatments. So I know that they're incredible. Not only do we work with sort of industry and companies and patients and regulatory bodies, we also work really closely with optometrists and ophthalmologists who are so key in the sort of the care delivery team. So we're going to see certainly more clinical trials, and we're working on totally beefing up the resources on our website to make sure that we can help people navigate through this information. Recognizing that we're not your ophthalmologist, like we can't tell you which trial makes more sense for you, but we can be that reliable source of information.
Yeah.
Right.
We know that it's a complicated landscape. There are so many clinical trials now, as Mary's pointed out. It's a rapidly shifting sort of medical world out there, especially in the world of vision science and vision health. So we know that this is an area where we can do some good work. And we know that when it comes to directing you in the appropriate way and connecting you to the trials that matter, we know that this is something that we can do. So that's going to be a big focus for us in 2018.
The next area of focus, the headline is sort of better together combination therapies. So like a decade ago I guess a little more than a decade ago now, but relatively recently we saw just a transformative drug hit the landscape for people living with age-related macular degeneration. This is the most common form of blindness in people over the age 55. And this sort of class of therapies are called anti-VEGF. Just rolls off the tongue.
Vascular endothelial
growth factor. You may recognize the name of like Lucentis, Eylea, Avastin. Those are like the names that would get used by your doctor, your care provider. And these you used to go blind if you had wet AMD. Now these drugs can save your sight, restore your sight, totally game changing.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been really actually a challenge to get something that's better than these best in class treatments.
Yeah.
So people are trying to get better than anti-VEGF. So people are thinking about people, including some of the research scientists that are funded by the Foundation Fighting Blindness. Like I think of Jean-Sébastien Joyal, who's doing incredible work in Montreal, and just got a major grant from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research yesterday. I have to give them a shout out. Just
Great.
Amazing work. So we're funding people to identify like new molecules that could or new disease pathways where you could figure out a different way to intervene and treat something. And companies like Bayer, Novartis, Allergan, some of these bigger pharmaceutical companies are looking at, well, what if you took an anti-VEGF and then you added something else to it and deliver these drugs in combination to get longer lasting. Oh, I see people are, something's not working. Just paused. Pause. Okay, great.
Seems okay.
Okay, keep going. So we're looking at ways that you can, if you have something that's great but not perfect, can you add something onto it to make it a little better? And it's been hard to get something better because those best in class are pretty good. But, we talked a lot last year about how you can combine not just different drugs, but you can maybe, for a disease like age-related macular degeneration, where perhaps somebody's already lost their vision, you could combine it with a stem cell transplantation therapy, where you could restore some vision, but then also use the anti-VEGF to treat the disease. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this combinatorial approaches, and that I think it helps to understand our strategy for supporting vision research, where we support research into discoveries that could fuel drug development, stem cell therapy, gene therapy, and maybe sort of think about those different approaches that could lead to new treatments.
Yeah. And we focus and have focused in the past on those diseases that don't currently have any treatments. But of course, we're interested in diseases that have existing treatments, that have had existing treatments for some time, but have some potential to have new treatments developed for them that can lead to better experiences for patients. I mean, anti-VEGF, as you pointed out, is a modern approach to treating wet age-related macular degeneration as well as other diseases, and it's better than the previous treatment. The previous treatment, the primary treatment at least, involved using lasers to actually destroy the parts of the retina that were damaged by wet AMD. So this is an improvement. It's better for patients and it leads to better results, but we can still do better in all categories, right? There are always better treatment options out there. We just have to develop them.
Absolutely. And so then the final trend was, Chad already started talking about CRISPR, and I think we're going to see a lot more in the gene editing space. But we're going to expand that out, so we're not just talking about CRISPR gene editing, but there are more and more sort of technologies that allow scientists to change your genetic material. So, CRISPR is about changing the DNA. We have other new treatments like antisense oligonucleotide-based treatments, which change the RNA. We can have a separate kind of biology tutorial maybe about these differences at some point, but this whole world of gene editing is growing, moving forward, expanding. So we're going to see more of that.
It's modifying existing genes, right? That could be worthwhile to point out. So it's about editing those genes that are already essential to your genetic makeup. Whereas Luxturna is gene therapy. It's about taking a healthy gene and introducing it into your genetic makeup to replace either a missing gene or a damaged gene. So there's a difference between gene therapy and gene editing. Sometimes we use those interchangeably, or we use gene therapy as a kind of umbrella term. But there is a difference there that's worth pointing out.
That's true. Details matter.
Yeah, they do matter. You're right.
Details matter. So that's all I really wanted to say about that story. I think that I did, in talking about Luxturna, we did kind of respond to a question that came in from Marcy about are there any new treatments for RP? this Luxturna treatment does work for certain forms of RP. RP caused by 2 mutations in both copies of your RPE65 gene. So again, it's a push to you. I can't answer the question about if it'll work for you until you know what your genetic diagnosis is, and there are many more trials on the way. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
And in closing, we wanted just to give a little shout out about a really amazing educational opportunity coming up. So Chad, if you could speak about Young Leaders.
Yeah, this is our Young Leaders Initiative, which we've had going for something like 3 or 4 years now. And the summit, which is the annual sort of centerpiece event of the initiative, is just around the corner. It's being held on March 9 and 10 of this year at the CNIB Community Hub, which is at Yonge and St. Clair here in Toronto. So this is an event for young people affected by blindness or vision loss, age 17 to 30. And we know that there are many young people living with blindness and vision loss out there. According to a CNIB report called Living Blind as a Child or Youth, there are 23,000 individuals in this age category living with blindness and vision loss. So we know that youth affected in this way are out there. We also know that they are facing incredible hurdles when it comes to being successful, which is why the Young Leaders Initiative focuses on careers and focuses on education and
leadership.
And leadership, yeah, absolutely, as clear in the title. Being a leader, what that means to be a leader, taking the skills that you hone and that you develop during the summit and elsewhere, and bringing those skills and that knowledge back into your own community. I think that's a really important part of being a leader, right? Being a leader all the time and sort of helping other people, shepherding other people through various ordeals and difficulties that they face.
Yeah, being a part of this program, which we launched in 2015, is really one of my favorite parts of the year at Foundation Fighting Blindness. It's incredible. If you want to learn more, reach out to us here. What's the enrollment deadline?
The end of this month.
End of this month.
Yeah.
So there's still time. Right now it's open just to people living in Canada, but if you're living outside of Canada or you know a young person with a vision impairment living outside of Canada, you can still encourage them to reach out to us because we're always looking to expand our programming.
Yeah, just contact me directly, contact us, and we'll talk about that. And the announcement that I wanted to make, which is very exciting, is that we've recently secured our keynote speaker for the summit this year, who is Donovan Tildesley. And if you haven't heard of Donovan Tildesley, you should look him up. He's a Canadian para-Olympian swimmer who has held multiple world records. So he's one of these people that just does amazing things.
Heli skiing.
Heli skiing, yeah. He does a number of winter sports as well as summer sports. So he's just an incredible human being generally. But,
and a nice guy.
And a nice guy, which is part of being an incredible human being. But alongside all of this, he's also an incredibly successful insurance broker, right? So he works full time and then goes and does all this mind-boggling stuff on the side, which is quite incredible. So I think
you don't heli ski on the side?
I used to heli ski when I was a teenager, but I just didn't find it challenging enough. So I'm really happy that Donovan's going to be a part of the summit this year, and he'll have a lot to offer the participants, I think. So March 9 and 10, register by the end of this year. Reach out if you know someone outside of Ontario or outside of Canada who wants to be a part of this, and yeah, it's going to be a great event.
Well, I think that brings us to the close of our first Facebook Live session of 2018. And so we're going to continue with these monthly sessions. The best way to be engaged is to sign up for our e-news. Our monthly e-news is totally free. And you get all the latest and greatest. We always are, trying to be on top of things to the best of our abilities.
Yeah.
And then we hope to, see many of you throughout the year as we talk through some of the more complex issues and answer your questions during these sessions. We also have some more fun Facebook Live field trips planned.
We do. That's great.
So it's going to be a great year. We love answering your questions. If you found this video helpful, please like it and share it. Share it with your friends because that's how we can spread the word. and that's important work to do.
Yeah.
Spreading the word.
Spread the word, by all means.
So until next time, Facebook friends, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Take care.